And we just noticed that our page doesn't look so great on smaller device sizes. So let's try to figure out like where is the breakpoint, where it's still okay and where it's not anymore. So this is 900. So when we go below 900, things get a bit squishy. So we can plan, and that's one nice feature of Pinegrow, by the way. We can open multiple page views, and we say, okay, let's show this one at large, and this one at medium. And we can notice that medium is already kind of messed up, not enough place for our elements. So we will plan to have at least two different designs, one for the medium, for the large size, one for smaller sizes, and let's check also what happens if we have very large display. Let's say 1600 pixels. It also doesn't look nice. So we will define three different grid layouts. One for small devices, our like default one, which we already have, and one for large devices. But before we start doing that, until now, all our CSS stuff is, encoded directly on style attributes of the elements. And that's useful when we are playing with the design, we are building initial design. It's very easy, we can do it without thinking about the CSS rules. But now we have to use proper CSS structure because inline styles don't work with media queries that we need to target different device sizes. So first step, we have to clean up and put all of these styles into proper classes. And that's not difficult to do in Pinegrow. So let me show you again. So we go style attribute and we click save element style to CSS rule. And here we can use the helper. We can say, okay, body. This will create a rule for the body element. Create. And there we have it. Body element, CSS rule for the body element. And let's continue. Let's go to the image. And we can also give it a class. For example, header image. Notice the dot at the beginning. This tells the browsers that this is the class. And Pinegrow will also assign the class to the image. So we just have one step, not much to do. And this one we'll call decoration. Again, dot decoration, because we are creating a class and assigning it to the element at the same time. Let's just use H1 for title. And let's do class for author. So you notice if there is just one element on the page, like body or H1, then we just target the body element, the H1 element with our CSS rule. We don't have to create classes for it. And here, because div is such a generic element and there can be many, so we will create and add a class text. Also for the quote. And for our menu. And for the logo, logo class is already assigned to the element, so we just select this one, create. So now everything is properly in classes, and our goal is that we just create different grid layouts without changing anything else in order to ensure that the page looks good on different devices. And again, Grid helps us a lot. Grid helps us with this immensely. So let's go to the body. And here we have our body rule. So, usually when we have mobile first approach, everybody talks about it and it says, oh, you first design your page for mobile. But especially with CSS Grid, which is a very creative concept, which shines on larger device sizes, you never go first and design it on mobile, because there everything is kind of flat and probably just one main column with content. But you always jump into a bigger size, larger size, and start designing the layout there. So then we have to go back to mobile and further to larger sizes. So it's kind of medium size first instead of mobile first or desktop first. And things can easily get complicated when we have so many copies of rules for different sizes. And the approach I found works the best for Grid is, as a first step, to duplicate the body rules, because we will have 3 body rules for 3 different sizes. So let's make 2 copies. One and one more. And if we check now the active view, they are all listed here and override each other. And then what we will do, we will take the last one that we created, and we will say, okay, this one will affect large device sizes, 1200 pixels and up. We did that, and it disappeared from the active view because our current size is smaller than that. So that rule doesn't cover it. So for the next one, we will say, okay, this body rule will affect sizes like 992 and up. And that's our current size. And then let's open a mobile view and switch there, the body element there. And now we see there is only one rule which affects it, and that's our body rule without any media queries. And if I go here, we see we have an additional one with media query for larger sizes that overrides our plain default body rule. And when working with mobile first approach, we define a rule without media queries that will cover all sizes and then override what needs to be changed on higher sizes with additional rules targeted with media queries. So, okay, it will become clear if this looks a bit too much at the moment. I think just keep watching what we're doing and things will get clearer. And we can leave 2 views open so that when we change things on the mobile, we can immediately make sure that nothing gets messed up on the large display. So let's open the Grid editor for the mobile devices. Usually the strategy on mobile is to go with one column So we can delete this and this. And we also deleted the quote. And then something happens with grid. If we have an element which says, oh, my named area is quote, but we actually don't have the named area in the grid, then the browser will automatically create the area, will add new columns and new rows to our grid. And that's why we get this effect. You see here we have additional column and additional row created. But this is easy to fix. We can just add a new row down here and say, okay, quote should go here. So if we now, I will remove this view because it takes up too much space, we can't see well. So you see now we have 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, and everything is kind of arranged in the middle one. And what we can do is we can make this, the left and the right, smaller. We can actually use percentage, for example, 5% and 5% here. So that when we stretch the design, it still kind of flows. And we need to separate the logo and the menu. So we'll create a new row. And we'll say, okay, the top one will be just logo. And again, notice everything got messed up. The reason is because our area is not correctly defined. Areas need to be rectangular, and this is L-shaped. And that's easy to fix. Once we change this to menu, everything is back in order. And we can make them smaller, maybe 80, even 60. Like that. And with our decorating element and the alignment as it is, I think it looks quite well. We don't need to change much else. And this is also okay. So now let's close the view and let's resize and observe what is happening. We notice that we have a problem here with the image. Here we notice we have a problem. Something is pushing like a grid out or coming outside. And let's check. So if we select decoration, we see it has like ending coordinate is set to 5. And actually this creates the problem because here we don't have the track number 5. Our mobile grid only goes to 4 tracks, and because number 5 is referenced, then browser will add new automatic column. So let's see what happens if we decrease the size to this area and to have it defined by the header line. Because in our grid, if you remember, we have header start and header end, and instead of using numbers like 4 or 5, we can use this track name to define the position of our decoration element as well. So we did that here, and now everything is okay. But what we need to check is what happens now on larger sizes, if things are okay there, and they are. Because header is defined there as well. It's more space, but it doesn't really matter. So sometimes grid or web development in general makes us detectives. We have to like debug what's going on and experiment. So luckily here in this case we quickly found the problem and the solution. So this is now the mobile view, which we use all the way to 990 pixels. Actually we can, let's edit the grid, we can make this spacing, left and right spacing, a bit bigger, maybe 10% on each side. And while still okay on mobile views, on small views, it also looks good on create more white space on larger ones. But here I see a problem, like if you go into really small size, now this decoration is hiding our menu because they have similar colors, and also it's pushing out of the screen. So, and I think it's not worth it, it's just decoration. So if we end up having lots of problems with a decorative element, then it's best to hide it, not to have it at all. And we can use Bootstrap, for that. So we will say on small sizes, this decoration should not be displayed. But now it disappeared from everywhere. Because if we don't do anything else, this setting applies to all sizes from this and up. So then we can go to small and we can say, okay, on small it should be shown. So now we have decoration will disappear on very small sizes and show up as we go on bigger devices. So this is one example how Bootstrap can be also useful in connection with CSS Grid. It's not really Bootstrap versus the grid, and in some cases they work very nice together. Okay, and now we have the small sizes, or small grid layout. It's okay, and then let's switch to bigger one, to our default size. And here we see now like a bunch of CSS rules are repeated. We only want to redefine the grid. There is no sense to having again like font family mentioned here, so we can simply delete this statement. And we leave this grid as it is because we designed it before. But let's now go to extra large devices and make it even bigger. And this is the rule we will be changing. So now let's open the grid editor. And you can see here on the top there is CSS rule setting, and this tells us which CSS rule we will be actually changing. And we can switch manually, and we can take a look at the body, and then we have larger one and the largest one, which at the moment is the same. It's just a copy. And Pinegrow will automatically switch and display the most relevant rule when we open the grid editor. So okay, let's take a look what to do here. We don't want the display to be so big, like these lines are really too wide and everything is spread out. So we can play with these values. We can, first of all, we can have more spacing. And the content part can be much smaller. And also the quote. And let's make this one 100 pixels as well. So let's move it around a bit to see what's going on. So on really big devices, it's still this is too big. And we can use min-max function and say like this should be at least 400 pixels, but not more than 600. Also, we can increase this size too, so that the quote is smaller. And still on very large devices, so let's try, like on iMac or something. This is quite ugly, right? It really makes no visual sense to have this grid spread out so much. Also, the image becomes kind of ugly. And there is no need to have a full width design on these large sizes. So we can just say on body, we can say, okay, maximum width should be maybe, oops, that's the height. We can say, oh, maximum width should be 1500, for example. And then we can also increase the spacing on the top of the image, 200, and we do it also down here to have the same. Okay, let's make it close this. And I think it's quite okay. Let's close have more space. Have it a bit bigger. And then let's open other sizes as well. And here we can preview our design on all the 3 device sizes that we targeted. And we can see that it looks okay. And that's the least fun part usually of dealing with web development, like taking care of all these responsive details. We spent a lot of time in this part of this tutorial. But again, in 20 minutes we were able to define 3 different layouts for different device sizes. And thanks to CSS Grid and also thanks to Pinegrow's tools for working with multiple device sizes and multiple page views at the same time. So I think we did a good job, but it's not finished yet because CSS Grid at the moment is supported on close to 90% of user devices. But what happens on devices that don't support, in browsers that don't support CSS Grid yet? Everything looks so nice at the moment. And Pinegrow also lets us check that. So here we can turn off CSS Grid features. Oops. And this is what we get. So there is still more work ahead of us, but it's not as bad as it looks now. So see you in the next part.